everyone, and welcome to the Becoming an Empowered Parent online series, offering expert tools for embracing imperfection, building connection, and creating more peace and joy within your family. I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Debbie Zeichner. I'm a parent coach, mindfulness facilitator, and licensed clinical social worker. And today I am so excited and thrilled to be joined by my friend, colleague, and occupational therapist, Jontue Koff, who is here to talk with us all about spirited kiddos and how to best support our spirited kiddos. So welcome, Jontue. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so great to see you.
So great to see you too. I wish we were in person though.
I know. I wish that we were doing this in person too. Absolutely. So I know that this is such an important topic. And before we dive into today, I want to just share with all of you a bit more about Jontue. Jontue Koff is a licensed and registered occupational therapist who received her master's in science from Columbia University. She founded At Play Occupational Therapy Services in 2013. She has worked at home, school, and clinical settings for over 12 years. Her therapy practice uses a holistic approach by treating the whole family to ensure carryover in the home. So important. You will often find Jontue at a variety of school sites, collaborating with a child's educational team. Jontue is SIPT, which stands for Sensory Integration Praxis Test Certified and Trained in Feeding. She is a member of the American Occupational Therapy Association and is registered with the National Board for Certification of Occupational Therapists. So again, Jontue, thank you so much for being here. So Jontue and I met many years ago. I can't remember how we met, but it's been several years. And I've just had, we've had the pleasure of being able to work together and collaborate together. And in addition to the individual OT work that Jontue does with families and with children, she runs this incredible Stop, Think, Go program along with her partner, our colleague, Jamie Siegel, who's a speech therapist. And I'm just always so in awe of the just powerful tools and resources that you offer to so many kids and families. So I'm really just so excited to have you here and to talk about supporting our spirited kiddos.
Yeah,
so
to talk about.
Yeah. So before we get in, can you just tell us a little bit more about your journey and how you got into this work?
Yeah. So I was actually volunteering at Shriners Children's Hospital in Honolulu after undergrad. And I was also working in advertising and marketing, actually. I left undergrad and went into business. And I was volunteering in the PT and OT department there. And I really just loved being in those OT sessions as a volunteer, helping Billy, the OT, sort of get materials and get prep for sessions. And when I started thinking about going to undergrad, I no longer really wanted to pursue like an MBA. I really wanted to get into a profession of helping people, specifically helping children and going into pediatrics. So that's really what sparked my interest in becoming an OT.
I love that. Love that. And you had that hands-on experience. It's so nice when you find that passion, right?
Yes,
and are able to follow that.
Absolutely.
So can you tell us a bit more about sensory integration and sensory integration therapy and really some of the issues that you commonly see in your practice?
So typically our kiddos that have sensory integration disorder or sensory processing disorder, they're really having a hard time really accepting really that input from the world via smell, via vision, auditory, touch. They're really having a hard time taking in that input and then coming up with an adaptive response. Their responses are oftentimes maladaptive, and typically that sets in, that sort of sets off some like behaviors. It's like a domino effect.
Yeah.
They typically look a little clumsy. Their coordination isn't that great. They're highly sensitive to noise or touch, be it, light touch or even, a big hug. It really just depends on their system, but their system is really from a neurological level. It really needs support and help with its development. And so there are kiddos that, you walk into a classroom and you can kind of pinpoint them out. They're just not functioning in the way that other children are functioning. Cognitively, they're typically very bright. They definitely see the world and they want to do things in it. It's just their approach isn't always super functional.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I always say they're like deep feelers, right?
Yes, they are
So
healers.
so let's talk about spirited children, right? And I always
Sure.
say, like, these are the kiddos that are going to change the world. That's how I see it, right? They
Exactly.
feel so deeply passionate. So what would you say are some of these kiddos' greatest gifts? And also, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges that they're facing, both at school as well as at home?
So it was always my belief when I got started in this work. There's the sensory integration therapy, the SI therapy, where we're really using that desensitization approach to help a child feel better about moving their body or being on a dynamic surface, or we're helping a child be more comfortable with putting their hands or their feet into various sensory bins. We're using that approach to help them, but at the same time, we have to teach that self-regulation piece as well, because when we're giving them the tools to let people know how they feel, because when they can tell people how they feel, they can advocate for themselves. And then we're not going into so much of the tantruming or those maladaptive behaviors that we typically see. So it's always been my practice, as what I call my best practice, is to do the SI therapy, do that desensitization work, and also work with the child and the family, especially to work on that self-regulation piece. How do I get my body to that green zone or that optimal level of alertness? With our spirited kiddos, they're so aware of the world. And I think that's part of almost like a coping mechanism, right? Like they're so aware of how this might make their body feel, but maybe they're not quite sure how to deal with that situation. What's my strategy? Is it my deep breaths? I need to tell a parent, because as we all know, parents typically aren't living in homes that are set up with equipment, right, to help their child get to that space. So we have to use self-reg techniques and advocacy to help that child. And so our spirited kiddos are they're very aware. They're so aware of their world, because I think they oftentimes sit back and sort of watch. And I also think there are kiddos that really just kind of dive in. And I think that also has its set of, I think, benefits when you're a kiddo like that. But it's also teaching them how to really manage their bodies and themselves. That's really, I think, I guess the challenge in it all. I love my spirited kiddos that come in here. I often find that they end up teaching me a lot about themselves. It's not me just teaching them. I'm the person that provides the safe space and the equipment, but they're really the ones that are able to tell me in this space how they're feeling, what their body needs. And sometimes it's with words and sometimes it's just with their actions. So I oftentimes will talk to parents about, what are you seeing? Like, I know what you're complaining about and I know it's difficult, but tell me really watch your child and tell me, what are those observations? What does that look like? Because then we can peel back some layers and really get some good work done, not just here, but in the home setting as well. So that's kind of my advice for parents with the spirited kiddos.
Yeah. And what do you say are the most common complaints that you hear from parents about their child?
Oftentimes it's that clumsiness. They're running into everyone. They're hugging everybody too tight. They're more or less, it's really oftentimes that seeking behavior that I think is causing a lot of discomfort in the home setting, in the school setting, and in the community. And what I really want to urge parents to do is, we've got to find baby steps, ways for them to get integrated, because I don't want them to not be a part of what's going on at home, at school, and in the community, because that doesn't help them at all. We got to really inch their way into these settings and help them to feel successful. And I think that's the biggest piece, is really helping them feel like they're successful and they can get control of the situation, because then they're willing to participate, right? When you're uncomfortable, you pull back, right? We don't want them to do that at all. They definitely they definitely have the ability, once they have those tools set and they've been taught how to kind of manage themselves a little bit.
Yeah, and I imagine there's so much education that goes into working with the parents, right? Really educating them on what is happening within their nervous systems, right? So what age do you typically start with kids? What age do you think parents can start to really talk with a professional, talk with their children about what they're seeing, what's happening?
Good question. So I feel like sometimes a parent sees it very early on, maybe around like that 2 to 3 age. And sometimes it comes out too with the feeding. Their child isn't tolerating certain textures. Then with dressing, there's just certain clothes they won't touch or wear. And we're talking about kids that they go from, I'm from green zone to red zone. I mean, there's no zone in between. I mean, it's so, their bodies just can't tolerate it, and they just really do lose control. So I would say parents start seeing it very early on. And sometimes what they'll do is, they think it's maybe more behavior based. So they'll still call me because they think that it's still in our realm and we still can help. But oftentimes there's a little bit more going on than just a behavior. And so, the trick is how it's happening over many settings and it's consistent and it really doesn't stop. That's when you have to really dive deeper. So I've had parents coming in as early as 2 years old and they're like, something's not right. And that is my biggest advice to parents too, and to moms and dads. Like, your child, and if something isn't sitting right, go with it. Like, just either reach out for help, talk to your pediatrician, because you'll know when something's not right with your kid and it's just more than a behavior.
And I imagine that there's also a great amount of shame for some parents, right? When they see their children acting out and they start to internalize it, as you said, as misbehavior or acting out behavior. And really what you're saying is that there's actually potentially so much more going on there.
Exactly.
And so it seems like it would just be such a benefit for parents to really get that education, and as you said, to really look at, watch and understand their child and seeing how their child moves in the world. Yeah.
My other thing too with parents is, I want them to, I rather a parent call and any professional and look at testing, because testing rules things out, right? So we might think it's something, we might test and say, wait a minute, it's not really this, we need to travel down the other path. But to never be scared to call someone and talk about your kid when you feel like something's not going right. And when the day-to-day is so challenging, that's another, I think, sign to call and, call your pediatrician and sort of get connected with who is the right professional. Is it a parent coach? Is it OT? Is their speech delayed? And that's causing them to feel very frustrated with how they can't communicate with the world. So there's so many different professionals that can sort of come together and sort of help the family. I find that parents are super receptive to strategies, tools, and tips. Do a lot of consultation with families and talk over the phone. And sometimes I feel like the family just needs some tips. So I'll either actually tell them to call you. It's something that some strategies we can work on, like, hey, let's teach some deep breathing, or let's try a couple of tools for the next few weeks, and then let's do another follow-up call. So that way we can see, are some of these tools working, or do we just need to dive in a little bit deeper? And sometimes too, it's the school and the parent doesn't see it and they're not really ready for an appointment, and that's okay. So that's when we start working on tools, or I'll talk to the teacher and say, hey, let's try this. And so we can try to sort of problem solve together.
Yeah. I mean, that collaborative approach, as you're saying, is so important, right? Because especially as you're saying, it's happening over many different settings, and we just want to have that awareness so that this child can not see him or herself as this bad child or this acting out child, but just a child who's struggling and just really needs some tools. So I know that you have, as I mentioned, earlier, this amazing Stop, Think, Go program. And so I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about just some of the tools that you teach kiddos in that program, and then how that carries over into the home. Because I know as you know, we read in your bio that that holistic approach is really important. That carry over is really important, so that parents can also feel empowered in this. So tell us a little bit about that program, what you teach, what you find to be most helpful, like what you see really resonating with the kids, and then what parents can do. And then we'll kind of move into like what parents can do specifically to transfer some of that into the home.
So I love our Stop Think Go program.
Yeah, it's amazing.
We were so sad that we're not able to do it this summer. I mean, as of now, we're definitely not going to move forward with any groups, but certainly it's not ended. Like, we will continue Stop Think Go, because I think it's been amazing. So Jamie and I, you know, Jamie is Siegel's a speech therapist, and we've come together and we put together this program using lots of, you know, models and programs that are out there. And so we teach the social thinking piece, that emotional regulation, and we teach the self-regulation piece. And so I really use, I use the zones of regulation. I use a little bit from How Does Your Engine Run? And so I'm basically teaching kids about their bodies. Like, if I have them stand in one place and run really fast and then feel their heartbeat really, really fast, what does that remind you of? Oh, I felt like that when I went to my new school or on my first day of school. So we're starting to teach them that those physiological effects that happen within our bodies, because once they're aware that they're getting heated or worried, or they're, you know, excited, then they can use a tool. So you have to really teach them how they're feeling and really, really try to move them. I mean, physically, like we're moving in the session, to try to teach them those zones, that green zone, that yellow zone, the red zone, the blue zone. And that way they can, it's easier for kids to understand when you put things into little compartments, but also they can start to use that language at home as well with their family, or use it at school. The zones of regulation is widely used in the schools, so it's something that I've also adopted in my practice, so that I can be aligned with the school system and where, you know, and their teachers, you know, sort of social emotional curriculum, because a lot of teachers are using it. But it's a wonderful program. So in our program, they flip-flop. So they come to see OT, and then they'll go to Jamie and they'll learn like a social thinking concept, right? So that they are better in groups. How do I work in a group? What is the group plan? How do I stick to the group plan? So they're learning those social thinking concepts. And with me, they're really learning about their bodies. And so it's super fun. And our last few sessions are the best, because we bring all the kids together and we use a lot of unstructured playtime, because typically that's when we see the issue, right? When it's unstructured, they're trying to manage their bodies. They're trying to manage, how do I get along with this group? So we bring them together, and then we really do start using those tools in real time with them. And all the while, after every session, we meet with the parent and we talk about the tool that we did that day or that session, and we encourage them to use it at home. The tool that I think is the most important for parents is modeling. And I think that this, you know, it's really important that, you know, parents are okay with saying something like, gosh, it was such a long day at work today. My body feels so tired. I think I just need to like lay down on the couch for 10 minutes before I have to start making dinner. You know, it's okay to say, I was sitting in traffic and I felt like I was in the yellow zone. I was getting really frustrated. And then I turned on some like really mellow music and I could feel my mind calming down. Using those examples in front of your children really helps them to be okay with their emotions, right? It's okay that you're not in the green zone all day. Like, we don't expect you to be, right?
Not realistic.
It's not realistic. So it helps them to be okay with their emotions, and B, now I'm like, oh, my mom or dad is using tools too. Like, I can use my tools, right? Like, they're doing it, because our kids learn best from our actions. So if we're losing it, they're going to lose it, right? And not to say I mean, I think as parents, we can all honestly say, yes, we've had those moments. And then that night we're thinking, that wasn't the right way to do it, right? And then it's okay to even the next day say, yesterday I got really upset and I really shouldn't have done that. Like, I needed to take some breaths or a break and I didn't use my tools and I'm so sorry, right? Because we aren't robots, right? So it's really important that, parents really see what their role is in teaching um, social and emotional like regulation and self-regulation. And so I think that's the biggest piece that I've tried to sort of help parents carry over from the get-go. It's like one of our first tips for home: start modeling.
Yeah.
Use these zones, use these tools, show them what your tools are, right? So that the whole family can have conversations about their emotions and everyone's okay with it.
Yeah. I love that, how it becomes just a shared language within the family. And it seems like it also just allows parents permission to take that pressure off of themselves. They don't have to be perfect. It's okay. We all mess up. And then it's okay, we mess up. And then how do we show up for our kids after that, right? Because as you said, they're constantly watching everything that we're doing.
I have a little boy. They drive out from Poway to the office here in Solana Beach, and the mom said she was getting really stressed in the traffic, and the little boy sat in the back seat. He's like, "Mom, smell the flowers, blow the candles." He's like telling her how to deep breathe, and so and I know I'm a parent of 2 kids, so I'm constantly carting around too, and so when a parent texts me I'm late, I'm like, drive safe, it's okay. Like, we have to have a short session, that's what it is today.
Yes.
No pressure from me, so you're right, though, it gives them permission and it helps open up this wonderful language in your home so everyone can really talk. And I think that'll lead to, as your kids get older, it'll lead to other emotions that they might be feeling with a friend or in school. I think it leads to conversations that are just, where your child can be very transparent and really open. I think it's a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing. And also what I love about it is it's really like kind of the introduction to self-reflection, right? For us to be able to self-reflect, model that for our kids. And then what you're doing and the work that you do is really inviting kids to self-reflect, almost being able to learn how to say, what do I need right now?
Exactly.
And how often is it that we as parents, and especially our kids, ever stop to think, what do I need right now?
Exactly. I love that. Yeah, totally.
Oh my goodness. So, Jontue, I know that there's so much to talk about today.
We could go on and on and on.
We could go on and on and on and on. And yet, in interest of time,
yeah.
So I know that you are so generous and gracious in terms of offering our listeners and our viewers a free gift. Would you like to share what it is that you have to offer?
Yeah, of course. So, I really do love doing consultations with families. And I always urge a family, if you think your child might need occupational therapy for any reason, if it's self-regulation, sensory processing, feeding, motor delays, visual perceptual or handwriting issues, I always urge the family to call and make an appointment for a free 30-minute consultation. And like I said before, oftentimes that might lead to even another consultation. So I typically, if they don't go on for too long, I'll continue to just help and support the family as best as I can, especially in this situation right now with COVID. I have a family that we're ongoing just consulting because they're not coming to the office. I've never, it'll be hard to Zoom with this child. So I'm consulting with mom and she's implementing tips at home and we're checking in with each other every few weeks. So especially now during this time, if the family needs some support, I urge them to just reach out and we'll figure out a time, we'll figure out some strategies and tools, and, we'll kind of take it from there.
That's so wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, because our listeners and viewers are everywhere, right? So to be
Yeah,
able to know that you can provide that virtually and support
for
and even help
sure.
guide in a direction, then sometimes, as you said, it's a little tip or tweak here that can make such a
The
huge
world of
difference.
difference. Yeah,
Yeah.
it could be just even like a simple tip of like try a visual schedule, right? Our kids' worlds are so uncertain right now. Their schedules, everything they know has really changed. And so a lot of my consultation has been how to support the schedule at home and help the child, be successful throughout the day, but also still provide that unstructured time and that play time because they really need that for their systems, and they really need that to help them develop better play skills and motor skills. And so I really do work with families on that piece as well.
Yeah, amazing. So Jontue, how can parents find you and how can they follow the work that you're doing?
Oh, sure. So you can always go to my website. It's at playot.com. I'm also on Instagram at playot inc. And I'll oftentimes post like sensory tips for the day or something like a fun strategy or a book. So I'll post some strategies and tools there. And then also you can always reach me at 858-209-1476. And I can also accept text messages on that number as well.
Awesome. Jontue, thank you so much. Parents, as you can see, Jontue is just such a wealth of information and knowledge and expertise and support. And I really just invite you to think about, what Jontue has shared with us today. This is a wonderful time to take out those journals if you're in a place where you can do that and write down some of the insights that you learned today, even just questions that you have that maybe you'd want to pose to Jontue or that you're thinking about. So Jontue, thank you again for just the incredible work that you do, the support that you give to just so many families. I know it's just incredibly beneficial. So thank you, thank you. And parents, thank you so much for being here, for taking this time to learn, to join us. And I really look forward to seeing you soon for another day of the Becoming an Empowered Parent series. So bye, Jontue. Thank you again. And
Bye. Thank
parents, bye
you.
for now. Bye.
Bye.